Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. Today, together with my colleague, Dr. Eleni Zampou, we're going to give you some further details about U-Turn project. Let's start giving you some background information about the 3PL market in Greece. So we have almost 63.5 thousand companies with a turnover of 13 billion euros and with almost 96,000 employees. These companies provide several services like storage, transportation, packaging, micro-picking, and so forth. Especially in Athens, there is a cluster of 3PL companies in a place in the western part of Attica called Thriasio, where you can find most of the warehouses. And the thing is that there is actually 5 out of 163 larger 3PL companies that share 26% of the market revenues. What is also important to mention is that if we take into consideration also in-house logistics, we have a total turnover of more than 19 billion euros, which is actually very important, at least for Greece. It's the second most important sector after the tourism. The logistics sector is actually contributing almost 10.5% of the Greek GDP. So, as you can understand, 3PL and logistics in general is something which is, at least for Greece, a very important sector. Now, what we have tried to do is trying to make all these people sit at the same table, especially for the 3PL companies and for the transport operators. I would say that it was actually the first time that we have successfully put all these people in the same table, start discussing for major issues and problems that they have, but they didn't want to share. What we have done actually is creating 2 industrial working groups. And it was very important that we have 2 associations, the ECR for the FMCGs and retailers, and also the Hellenic Logistics Association, which is actually the main body for 3PL and transport operators in Greece. This was very, very important because, as I told you, a natural body was actually in this table trying to identify and make all these people sit and discuss what are the main issues. So as you can see, we had a very good team of 3PL operators, transport operators, retail companies, FMCGs, and it was, as I told you, a very good opportunity to organize several meetings in order to discuss the problems that currently exist in logistics in Greece. Now, what we have understood is that the people that they were there said that they had the willing to disrupt their distribution and provide customer service with decreased cost. It was something very important because, as you know, there are some issues in Greece, economic recession, and as you can understand, there was a lot of problem with transportation and logistics since we had the problem with capital controls and so forth. So there was actually high competition. And most of the companies tried to do various things in order to minimize their cost, but they were actually forced to understand that in order to minimize cost, you have to take into consideration other practices, like, for instance, economy of scale. So they understood that it's very important to start discussing how they can collaborate in order to be able to be competitive, if we take into consideration that there are other countries surrounding Greece and they provide the same services. And also, they understood that economy of scales could reduce their cost and also provide better customer service. Now, as is happening also in some other countries, at least as I know, there was a lack of collaboration culture. Most of the companies believe that it's better to have this motto, me, myself, and I, working alone. They thought that other companies would steal their customers. They thought that it was not a good idea to start sharing information. They said also that some of them wanted to collaborate, but they didn't know which other companies were interested. They said about culture, that they don't have the same culture. They said also issues that deal with the compatibility of information systems and data sharing. They also said that in some cases they don't believe that other companies could support the SLAs, the service level agreements that they have with their depositors and their customers. So a lot of problems, a lot of things trying to show to us that it's very difficult to collaborate. However, what they understood is that, and based on the information that we have and the analysis that we have made for them, they understood that there are a lot of issues. And what is very important is that the Greek market is fragmented. Just to let you know that as far as the public trucks are concerned, we're talking about 1.5 truck per company. So as you can understand, there is no competitiveness. And this is very important. So they understand that there is a fragmented sector, an introverted market, so they had to do something very, very quick. So I could say that collaboration came not only because they were ready to do that, but because they were also forced to do something, since a lot of issues were raising these days in the Greek market. Of course, in most of the cases, there was a lack of agility and innovative mindset. Most of the companies wanted, again, to work together, but they were saying that we have to do that in a very specific way. They didn't want to share a lot of information. So it was very important that the U-Turn project, together with the Athens University Economic and Business, INTRASOFT, and us, OPTILOG, were there together with associations to provide a series of analysis and data that these companies wanted to have. And based on this information and the tools that my colleague Eleni will show to you, started understanding the idea of collaboration and the merits of collaboration. So what we told them is, first of all, that there are a lot of best practices all over Europe. There were also other projects, and we were starting identifying their requirements, identifying their needs, and also trying in a nice way to make this resistance to change to stop. In some cases, stop having this, this mentality. So we identified some cases of shared logistics opportunities, either among suppliers, among retailers, or even among 3PL companies. So in case of suppliers, we have seen cases like backhauling, also cases where we had deliveries in islands, for instance, since Greece has a lot of islands, as you know, and also in urban distribution. At the same time, we were also taking into consideration other concepts like urban consolidation centers, like concepts where we can have the remaining deliveries consolidated in specific trucks, delivering in a metropolitan area of Athens, in remote areas, and so forth. So we were starting categorizing the opportunities and the type of shared logistics opportunities that these companies had, in order finally to identify two of them, the UCCs and the case where we had shared distributions, something that Eleni will give you some further details about that. So Eleni, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vassilis. So, one of the opportunities that we actually identified is that there was, in some cases, some spare capacity that needed to be used, that could be used from other companies that have loads that cannot be transported in common areas by keeping a low cost. So we have from the one side empty vehicles or vehicles that have spare capacity to be shared, and on the other hand, some pallets that are waiting and asking for someone to carry them. But up to now, we have seen requirements, we have seen needs, and what we would like to do in our project, and we did at the end, was to implement something, to see how the concepts that we have investigated could be implemented in the actual environment, which are the benefits and which are the obstacles that are raising. Here you can see the approach that we used in order to match the needs of the two stakeholders. The stable matching approach is a famous concept, Nobel awarded, and is used actually and has real application in the case of residences in the hospitals, is used in the medical system of UK and US for donor exchange, and it's also applied in the cases of universities when you need to find another student that he would like to exchange his position in the university. And for those that are wondering what this stable marriage photo is about, another application of the stable matching algorithms is stable marriage. Who should be your ideal partner based on your preferences, and if you have selected a couple of them, does your preference matches with his preference? So this is pretty much the way that stable matching logic works out. Here, don't worry, I will not explain the more vague part of the slide. Here you can see part of the algorithm that has been implemented, because there are a couple of varieties in order to address the different challenges and the different market challenges and concepts. Actually, the algorithm has has three main characteristics that define the market. It's fair. What we have seen in previous algorithmic bindings solutions, they encourage sometimes the more opportunistic behavior. For example, someone could be a cherry picker, go in a platform, and always decide to choose the cheaper option that is available. In our case, we not allowed, actually, with regulation that exists in the algorithm, this type of behavior, because stakeholders report at the beginning which are their needs, so the algorithms at the end find the more fair solution and the more optimal solution in order all this system to reap the benefits of collaboration. Here you can see the platform that actually materialized this approach. Here you can see the interface. On the one part, we have the option of offer the spare capacity, and on the right side, we have the option of providing the loads that need to be carried by another 3PL company. There are a couple of views, different KPIs that will ensure to the stakeholders that can monitor the process, and they can also see the overall performance of the whole system, the number of matches in the whole ecosystem of collaboration for the 3PL's cases. Which is the innovation of the stable matching platform and also this approach in the case of collaborative logistics. It's not, as I told you before, a binding process. It's a collaborative way of identifying partners that could bring benefits on both sides. The other innovative part of this solution is that we develop it in close collaboration with the market. They are on board since the early beginning. We heard them. I think this is one of the reasons that these companies were so engaged in this process and they were so strongly involved in this process. They have the need to be heard and to find a common solution by a group of third parties, stakeholders that could listen what they need and merge their needs. So we have developed this solution by taking into account their needs, and also we have 2 real-life pilots where we test and see which was the benefits and the obstacles. Here you can see the time frame of the 2 pilots. At this point, I think that I should also mention that initially in our plan was to run only 1 pilot, since all these companies were not partners in our project. They participate in the project because they wanted to see the value behind this approach. So in the first round, we have run the first round for 3 weeks, and after the end of these 3 weeks, we were asked to rerun the pilot because they have identified the potential value and they wanted to run in a better way, in a more engaged way, in order to see which is the actual value at the end of the day. Here you can see how the loads that they have submitted for in the second round, in the second 2 weeks of pilot execution, how they are distributed in the Greek area. Here you can see that the areas with the most interest are mainly 3. So we have the Messoi area, we have the south part of Athens, and also the Thriasian Pedion, it is called in Thriasian area. So we have identified 3 areas where they could collaborate. They could focus their efforts in order to address these flows on these specific areas. There is no need to fully to have a full scale of the pilots. They can just focus on these specific areas and try to see how they could benefit for synergies in these specific areas. Here you can see also the percentage of matches. We can see that 21% of the loads that have been submitted in the platform has been matched. And what I mean by matched, it means that another company has spare capacity in order to distribute these loads in the destination that has been requested. This is also the case with the vehicles. As you can see, we have almost 50% of vehicles that were matched, which means that 50% of the vehicles that have been submitted in the system with spare capacity could be used by one of the rest 3PL's companies. So big synergies came out at the end of the day. And here you can see also the difference between the first and the second phase. Even if the second pilot ran for 2 days, two days less, we have seen a bigger participation from all involved stakeholders, which actually is the reason why we have almost double matches in the second round. So the key message of this slide is that involvement, engagement could bring the benefits that all stakeholders envision to have from the shared logistics practices, and especially for this one that focus on remaining deliveries in specific areas that seems that have the most of the problems. I think that it's also one of the achievements of this process after completing the second round of the pilot, because we except from rerunning the pilot, during the preparation of the second round, we have taken into account all the comments about the user interface, about adding some functionalities in order to make it easier for them to use it in their day-to-day business. So after addressing also these comments, here you can see some of the enthusiastic comments of our customers, and they are real comments that we got and they shared with us. The other key findings during this process, it seems that collaboration could bring some benefits. What concerns mainly these people that were involved in this process is the question, what will happen after the end of the pilot? How we could implement it after the end of the pilot? Which is the vision after the 3 years of being involved in this process. And this is a question that, that we should answer as a community that work and dedicate so much effort on this type of activities. And the other issue that they have, and is related more on their internal processes, is how they could implement it on a day-to-day basis. Because what came out during this pilot is that in 2 cases in the first round, there was high-level management support for running the pilot, for actively participating, but when at the end of the day we saw the number of loads and the number of vehicles that have been submitted to the system was almost 0, which means that they have also to struggle with their inner obstacles, they're reluctant to change, the problems that they also have as SMEs most of the times, this type of companies. And I will close my presentation by showing the faces behind all this process. Here is the team, are the 3PL companies, you can also see Vassilis and all the team from INTRASOFT, OPTILOG, and AWeb, and also the 3PLs. And you cannot see me because I'm the person who takes the photo in this case. So strong collaboration and engagement is important. We repeated it most of the times, but we should find a way to make it, to bring the actual benefits and materialize what we envision from in our job. And thank you very much.